Okay, so it is the week where we're doing the Mount Rushmore of County Dublin. Naturally, we've had to split it into two sections. We're getting stuck into North Dublin today, and Kenny Cunningham is here to help us out with the football contenders from the north side. Kenny, you're very welcome. First of all, just to set the scene a little bit here, as a child growing up in North Dublin, was it basically GAA or football? They were your two options when it came to the sport you were going to play.
I don't think it was anyway saying I was going to play either of those two, to be honest with you, either. But yeah, they're the ones I kind of played predominantly growing up. GAA at school mostly because the club football scene just didn't work for me playing the GAA and the football. So it was basically football the weekends and GAA in school. So that's what I kind of persevered with, and I was lucky enough, obviously, to have a career in one of those fields.
Let's get stuck straight into some of the contenders here, because this is the better side of the city, right? When it comes to the bigger names, like, make your case for the north side here. Why is it the better side of the city when it comes to the footballing talent that's come out of this side of the Liffey?
I wouldn't necessarily say the bigger names. Definitely the better part of the city. I'd have that conversation with you all day. But no, look, it's hard for me to make a strong argument north side rules in terms of the football and talent that's come through the county, because I remember when I played, I was trying to think there off the top of my head the number of north side players. There wasn't too many, because we'd have our five-side games. We'd have north side, south side, Dublin v the rest of Ireland, that type of thing. But it was always a bit of a struggle getting a five-side team from North Dublin. So it was basically me and Mark Kinsley. They were the first two names on the list, and then we'd be struggling a bit, to be honest with you. We'd be heading into Wicklow and Kildare and all the kind of surrounding Louth. We had to grab Gary Kelly and Ian Hart as like North Dublin stroke Louth men. So no, it was the South Siders who dominated it. Dunny, Robbie, of course, Duffers, Quinny, all of them boys. So no, I can't honestly say at the time any of the squads I was in, there was a huge quota of players in the squad, but it's quality, not quantity, as we know.
Without question. And when it comes to quality, you just have to turn the clock back a little bit for some of Ireland's greatest ever sports people, let alone footballers who've come from the north side of the city. If you had to pick one name on this Mount Rushmore that comes from North Dublin that was a footballer, who would be your number one pick?
I can't just look. You got to give me a little bit of leeway here on in terms of a few of the names. In terms of football players, I think you have to be very careful. For me, I can't have a conversation about who's the best player, a kind of left back or a centre forward. They're very much position specific for me. So now, like some of the great footballers from North Dublin, obviously not necessarily of my time. Immediately, I mean, Johnny Giles is there. Johnny was just basically a hop, skip and a jump north, so he was Ormond Key, I think, John. So we're claiming him like a street urchin. And then Liam Brady and Ronnie Whelan for me. They're the three that kind of stand out. And I think there's a good discussion to be had there because they all occupy that central area of the pitch. I'd throw in kind of Dave O'Leary, Frank Stapleton of that era as well in terms of real top quality. But I think those three players, I think they were actually voted in as the three most influential. I think there was some kind of award given some years ago, not too long ago. Maybe RT were behind it, and I think those three players are pretty much in the shake-up. And there's not much between them. You could easily argue a case for any three of those players, but of the three of them actually own. For me, Liam's probably the most interesting one. Because it's only when you actually look at his career path. I was aware of the fact that Liam obviously played for Arsenal and he spent some time in Italy, etc., going up. You're aware of it and you hear of it. But when you actually delve into it a little bit more depth and you listen to people who saw him play at the time, who played with him, you become far more impressed in terms of what he actually achieved during his career. To leave Arsenal when he did, and he would have been reasonably young when he left Arsenal, on 24, 25 years of age, 1979, I think it was, 80, and made the step to Italy, Italian football and Juventus. That was huge. I don't think we appreciate it now because, there's such an overlap of players the last 10, 15 years in terms of playing different countries and, the natural flow of players going and playing the football globally. It's not so much a talking point now, but back then, it was a huge step for me. And I think to myself, what a brave thing to do, because he could have very easily stayed in the comfort zone at Arsenal. He was a great player there, loved, respected, and played there for another 10 years. But he didn't. He took, to some extent, a harder option. Took the step to join Juventus, different environment, obviously, language, kind of battle-hardened league, and a very experienced side as well, and had to kind of prove himself all over again, establish himself in that environment. And not only that, Owen, he actually thrived. It wasn't as he went over there, he was part of a good Juventus squad, played his fair share of games. I mean, he was never present for that first 2 years, and there were two years when they won the league title back-to-back, and he was instrumental. Not that I saw every game. I've seen very little on, just little snippets here and there. But the more you read about him during that time and listen to people speak about him, the more you get an appreciation of really how good he was and the impact that he made in that team. And that was a team full. Rossi was still playing then. Paolo Rossi, Bettiga, people at this. Tardelli would have been playing. Trapattoni, of course, was his manager. I imagine that's where he forged his links with Trapattoni. But he actually drove that team forward, Liam. And there was some quotes there from Trapattoni, not just about Liam's skill set. We all know that is kind of left foot and, beautifully balanced player, lovely ball playing kind of midfielder. But Trapattoni spoke about it, kind of his personality, kind of mental strength, which he had as well in terms of being a leading figure in that team. So for me, that's hugely impressive. And it's amazing, really, that he left there after 2 years. I'm not talking too much here, am I? But this is obviously
keep going, please.
This is probably the reason why I'd lean a little bit towards Liam, because he only left there because of Michel Platini's arrival and the 3-foreigner rule. Because there's no way he should have left that club. He could have easily spent, in a different time, he could have easily spent 5-10 years there and won untold trophies. But it was a little bit political. I think Platini was coming in, the deal had been done, and they just couldn't accommodate Liam with him in that central midfield area. Not necessarily that Platini was by far the better player. It's just the timing of Platini coming at that time. So Liam went out the door and played Sampdoria, bounced to Inter after that, didn't he? I think he finished... was it Ascoli or something he finished? But Ascoli, he played it. Yeah, but it's amazing, really. I think that's phenomenal. I have a huge amount of respect for players who go and prove themselves in a different type of environment, a different league. And there was no league as strong and as testing at the time than the Italian Serie A. So when I talk about Ronnie was a player I saw. He's the youngest to me. I would have seen a lot more of Ronnie play, and Ronnie was a brilliant midfield player. John, for different reasons, I haven't seen as much of John, but I've read enough and spoke to enough people and seen enough to get an appreciation of how good John was. But I just think Liam's career path in terms of what he achieved, his time in Italy and the impression that he made over there, for me, of those three players in that position, I'd probably just lean ever so slightly towards Liam in that respect of those players. So if you're looking at it, ask me to give. But before I put forward Liam Brady as my most outstanding North Dublin player of all time, Yakety Yak, I want to throw forward someone else who wouldn't, I'd imagine, be in people's thoughts. Because like I said, for me, it's very much position specific. So there's a player I played with, for me, is as good as anything player I've played with. And I didn't see much better at the time I was playing football. And Stephen Carr. I never played with Stephen at club football. I only played him at international football. And Stephen, for me, when he was fit and playing, there was nobody better. I didn't play with, or at times didn't see a better fullback than Stephen Carr. Stephen Carr had everything in terms. In the modern game, we're so used to talking about fullback zone, their kind of attacking qualities, how productive they are in the opposition half, the pitch, goals, assists. And it's almost a given that, well, they can't really defend. If they can kind of defend to a basic level, it's a bonus. Stephen Carr could do everything. Stephen Carr was a very good defender, very tenacious, great 1v1, could never be beaten, ridiculously quick, strong, physically strong, good positional sense as well. So as a centre-half, if you had Stephen on your right-hand side, you knew you were cruising, because any ball over your shoulder, if you're around on the cover, that kind of recovery speed was phenomenal. I actually played over the other side of the pitch by and large to Stephen. But he was a fantastic defender, and he was great going forward in terms of crosses into the box, being productive in the opposition half the pitch as well. the problem with Stephen was he had a number of bad injuries during the course of his career on at Spurs, Newcastle in particular when he went up there. But Stephen was another one of those players for me, just time. If the timing had been better from Jordan's career, he could have stepped into the best club teams in the world. I'm talking about the very best in England, Spain, Italy, and wouldn't have looked out of his depth. He would have actually excelled. He was an absolutely brilliant fullback.
That's huge praise, Kenny. Like, this is a slight tangent, but I realised we never put this to you at the time. We were doing our best Ireland 11 from the Premier League era, and it ended up being a battle between Steve Finnan and Seamus Coleman for the right-back slot. By the sounds of things, you would have Stephen Carr in there.
Oh, easily.
Right.
Easily in there. I was just going to say, at that time, he actually had fierce competition in that Ireland team. Gaz Kelly was there when I first came in. Steve Finnan was a wonderful, accomplished fullback. Even Jeff Kenny, who never gets a mention, I played with Birmingham. Jeff was a lovely footballer. In a different era, probably would have got another 30, 40 caps. Jeff. Seamus I didn't play with. But Stephen, for me, when he was at his best, and when he was fit for a period of time playing, for me, possibly Stephen would have the edge on all of those fullbacks. He was absolutely powerful. I'm surprising people don't appreciate it. Stephen wasn't the most media friendly during the course of his career. Shied away from the cameras, never gave interviews. Bit of a miserable git, to be honest. That was the perception. That was the perception of him. It really was, chip in his shoulder, surly old puss on him, blah, won't do an interview. That's how I got the impression. That's not obviously how his teammates saw him, although he could be a little bit miserable on occasion, don't get me wrong. Probably only time I saw him smile was probably 2-3 years ago when he popped in to do an interview with Sky. He was a little bit more media friendly. But his game, was absolutely frightening. He was so quick. He had that low centre of gravity, ideal build for a fullback for me. Kind of low centre of gravity, powerful like legs and midriff, upper body as well. He was a good, really good professional, kind of dedicated, time in the gym in terms of physical conditioning. And like I said, his defending was great. Probably a little bit too tenacious at times, picked up quite a few yellow cards, I would have thought, during the course of his career. But I love that. I love to see a fullback with an appetite to go and win his tackles and not to get beaten in 1v1s. Take a real pride in that. You don't see enough of that in the modern game. Those players are few and far between. But Stephen he was absolutely a fierce competitor. And like I said, going forward, lovely technique, dribbling ability, and great delivery into the box. He had a wonderful ping of a ball. I don't know if you remember the guy. He got a famous goal against United, I think it was, White Hart Lane. 35 yards, he pinged it into the top corner. It was like match of the day goal of the season contender. It was a brilliant goal. He was that good of a striker with the ball. Him and Stephen Reid are probably two of the best strikers the ball ever played with in terms of hitting the balls through the laces over distance, like really precise. He really was that good. And it was only injuries. He stints out of the game for long chunks. And Stephen actually retired after Newcastle. People don't realise Owen. And he went back to Dublin to live in Dublin. He was playing golf down at Portmarnock Links most days, and he got a phone call to go back to Birmingham. And obviously I know a bit more of this. I know people up in Birmingham. I used to play there. I was gone at the time. But he went back after Christmas. He just went over there for a month's trial. And that month's trial, they extended it to the end of the season. He made such an impression going over there in that few months. They got promoted that season. He stayed there, was made captain, 9th in the Premiership the following year, and led him to the Carling Cup. He's an absolute legend up at Birmingham. He's in the best ever Birmingham 11. And he'd actually retired and come out of retirement to play up there. But I remember watching him play up in Birmingham, and the level he was playing at up there was absolutely frightening. He was more experienced player there, possibly even a better defender in some respects. But he was that good. He was that. I'd compare him to Seamus in terms of Seamus was at a level I felt maybe 4 or 5 years ago. If the timing had been better, I'd make the argument for Seamus Coleman could have played in any team in the world, Madrid, Barcelona, any of the top Italian teams. He was playing good. Just the time and contract, whatever it was, he stayed where he was at Everton, and kind of the opportunity passed him by. Probably a little bit similar to Stephen. Maybe his injury record went against. When he left Tottenham, he spent 10 years there and went to Newcastle. For me, again, could have played for any top teams in the world. He really was that good. I think Dennis is probably regarded as our finest ever maybe fullback, and I'd never argue that. But I'd always make an argument for Stephen alongside Dennis, tantalisingly close to Dennis, because when he was on his game and he was fit, he was absolutely powerful player.
It's remarkable, Kenny, because I think everybody remembers how good he was, but I don't think we've heard too often just how good he was. I don't think people rate him generally as high as you put him there. I think it's pretty clear that he is underrated if that's really how good he was. So Stephen Carr, a great left field shout that I didn't actually expect to come up today. You've gone through Liam Brady already. Just one other quick mention on John Giles. Did you remember watching him play at all at any point, even when he came back to play in the League of Ireland?
No, I never saw John. I never saw John play. Even Liam, I've only got small recollections. That cup final was in '79. He played that instrumental role, wasn't it? It was against Sunderland. They won Arsenal. Vaguely remember some snippets of that, and I've seen a little bit more footage of Liam over the years, just because John was that little bit far removed in terms of the time that he played. But again, you speak to enough players, and I suppose you lean on other players a lot who played in that era, who played the game, and people whose opinions you respect. And when they're consistently saying the same things about the likes of Liam and Johnny Giles, you pretty much take it as face value. I've been lucky enough to work with those lads in the media, predominantly up in RTA, and it's been great and have the opportunity to have a good conversation with John over the years and Liam. And possibly I didn't take the opportunity maybe to speak enough really about when they played. You don't like to pry too much, like you listen to them when they speak, so you get a bit of a flavour of the times and when they played. But it's pretty obvious in terms of the qualities which John had. Different type of player to Liam. Liam was a bit more box to box, up and down the pitch, a bit more mobile. I think that kind of dribbling ability. John, you always struck me as more of a playmaker, sitting there and control the game from a slightly different area, a deeper position on the pitch, but still highly influential on the pitch. Just different types, but I think he can. It's easier to have that argument, Liam, John, and Ronnie, because they occupy this central area of the pitch. And I know people say, Stephen, when you talk about Stephen Carr, you talk with Stephen Carr and Liam Brady. I'm not saying Stephen Carr was as good a player as Liam Brady, but I just don't think you can have the argument so easy. All I'm saying is, in his area of the pitch, Stephen Carr, he absolutely excelled. He was as good as anything I've played, or actually I've seen. I can't say great fullbacks in the modern game. Danny Alves, I say it springs to a lot of people's minds on. Maybe of my age, your age even. Great world-class fullback. So would that be a fair comment? Danny Alves might be up there, a lot of people's top fullback, maybe top 3 of the last 10 years. But I tell you now, I take Stephen Carr ahead of Danny Alves any day of the week. Stephen Carr's
really?
Oh, absolutely. Stephen Carr was a far better defender than Danny Alves. Danny Alves' stats going forward, maybe in terms of kind of goals scored and probably assists, probably superior. But as an all-round player, excuse me, I apologise for that. As an all-round player, which I value an awful lot in the full-back area of the pitch in terms of their defensive strengths and their attacking strengths of an equal measure, for me, Stephen Carr was a better player. I'd have Stephen Carr in my team all day of the week. And that's not because of the fact he was born half a mile down the road from me in Dublin either. That's a pretty impartial opinion.
The cherry on top is never something we shy away from here. Ronnie Whelan, Frank Stapleton, David O'Leary are the other 3 you've mentioned outside of Carr, Brady, Giles. Is there anything you want to say about them, and any particular memories that take them to this level where when you think about Northside footballers, they are one of the first names on the tip of your tongue?
No, I don't think there's much more I can say. A lot of people would have seen Ronnie play. I always feel as if the biggest compliment Ronnie, I hear from the chit chat about Ronnie, came from Graham Souness. I've heard Graham Souness talk a number of times when he's asked to pick the team he'd want around him, his best 11 of players he played with and he saw. He always picks Ronnie. Ronnie's the first one he picks along something. He played with some amazing players, world-class players. He went over to Italy as well. Always doesn't even have to think about it. Ronnie Whelan's the first one. So that's good enough for me. If a player of Graham Souness's quality elects to put Ronnie Whelan alongside him, that says everything for me. Ronnie had pretty much everything: goal scoring, playmaker ability. He had a bit of devilment in him as well, Ronnie. You wouldn't physically impose yourself on Ronnie Whelan either. So I don't think I have to add too much in terms of Ronnie Whelan and Johnny Giles, even Liam to an extent. I think we're splitting hairs when we start to dissect their individual ability. Like I said, it was just that career path, Liam's career path and what he achieved over in Italy for me, which I find hugely impressive. And for me, maybe just gives him the edge on those 2 other players. And probably why, if you're asking me for that one North Dublin, North side player who I'd put forward, it probably would be Liam for those
Very
reasons.
Good. Liam Brady is the selection then if you were to pick one, but I think we've just got to build a mountain for Stephen Carr's different expressions alone and put 4 different Stephen Carrs up on the mountain, because clearly you've waxed lyrical about him today. Kenny Cunningham, great stuff. Thanks a million for breaking down some of the football candidates from North Dublin.
Cheers, our pleasure.